This video is on unit conversions, including dimensional analysis. To begin, I want to ask you to name any fraction equal to 1. What about 5 over 5? That's equal to 1. Or 16 over 16, or negative 10 over negative 10. Isn't it true that any number over itself is equal to is equal to 1? What about variables or even expressions? Can we use them to also write a fraction equal to 1? Is x over x equal to 1? It sure is. If x was 3, then 3 over 3, when you plug it in, is equal to 1. So variables over themselves are also equal to 1. And an expression like m plus 2 over m plus 2, is that equal to 1? It is. It fits the description, anything over itself. And of course, if somebody said to you m is 5, and you plugged in 5 for m, you'd get 7 over 7, which is equal to 1. So now that we've covered that, we need to look at units. If we look at this fraction here, 3 feet over 3 inches, what I want to know is if that is equal to 1. Certainly 3 over 3 is equal to 1, but do the units matter? Let's think about the length, because remember, we're talking about something over itself is equal to 1. So 3 feet, that's probably about the width of your desk. Is that length the same as 3 inches, which is maybe the width of your hand? Clearly not, which means that this fraction is not equal to 1. So even though the numbers are the same, the units make a huge difference here, and in any fraction. So what about 365 days over 1 year? Well, now that we decided that the units matter, even though our numbers are different, if we can determine if the value of the top is equal to the value of the bottom, then this fraction is equal to 1. So the question is there 365 days in 1 year? And of course there is, which means that this fraction is equal to 1. So any fraction whose numerator and denominator are equal is called a unit fraction. What special property do you know about multiplying by 1? How can we use a unit fraction, a fraction equal to 1? Well, you know that if you multiply something by 1, the value stays the same. 3 times 1 is still 3. 7 times 1, still 7. X times 1, still x. So it retains the value. We're going to use this concept of multiplying by 1 and using unit fractions with equivalent numerator and denominator to do something called dimensional analysis. And you can see in my examples here, we'll be changing things like 4.25 feet and figuring out how many yards that is, or 0.5 miles and figuring out how many yards that is. Using dimensional analysis, we can change any unit into another unit. We'll need to know the relationship between the units we're using. For example, 3 feet is equal to 1 yard because 3 feet is in 1 yard. Also, and that will help us with example 1. But with example 2, I see we're going from miles to yards. Most people don't know how many yards are in a mile, and I'll tell you, I don't know how many yards are in a mile. So for this one, we're going to need to take 2 steps to do the second example. Some common equivalent units we do know. Besides 3 feet is equal to 1 yard, I know that 5,280 feet is in 1 mile, or equal to 1 mile. And so we're going to use that. And if that's a number you don't know, it's a very common one, and you should memorize that conversion. So here in red is the important gist of the whole thing. since unit fractions are equal to 1. And since multiplying by 1 doesn't change the value of anything, we can use those two things to perform dimensional analysis. And this is just a fancy term for converting units. Boy, you'll impress everybody when you say, I can use dimensional analysis. So, the first step is to take what you're starting with and put it over 1. Just make it a fraction. You know that you can do this with any whole number when you need it to be a fraction. You can do it here as well. The second step is to use the conversion that you know to make a unit fraction. 3 feet is equal to 1 yard could be written as 3 feet over 1 yard or 1 yard over 3 feet. Now we can do it either way. These are both unit fractions involving feet and yards. Notice the 3 stays with the feet and the 1 stays with the yard, because that's the way it is here. The rule is what you want to get rid of, in this case feet, goes on the bottom. And what you want to end up with or keep goes on the top. And so since 3 feet is in 1 yard, I find feet, 3 feet is 1 yard. What this does for me, remember anything over itself cancels or is equal to 1. And so since feet is on top and feet is on bottom, I can actually cancel those out. And what I end up with is keeping yards, which is what I want, and I get 4.25 yards over 3. And of course I can do that division, 4.25 divided by 3, and I'm going to have to approximate. This is the symbol for approximately, and I get 1.42. Don't forget your units, yards. That is the whole point of this. If all the times to leave units off your answer, this is not it. So for this second one, you heard a minute ago that we're going to have to do 2 unit fractions here because I don't know how to go directly from miles to yards. If I knew how many yards were in a mile, I could use that in my unit fraction. So I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to change from miles, since I'm getting rid of miles, it goes on the bottom, into feet, because I know this one. I know that there's 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So 5,280 feet in 1 mile. Okay, so miles is going to cancel because numerator, denominator, anything over itself. And so now I have feet. I know I'm going to multiply those together, but before I even do that, I don't want feet. I want yards. So what I want to get rid of goes on the bottom. What I want to end up with goes on top. Feet and yards. I know that one. There's 3 feet in 1 yard. So 3 goes with feet, 1 yard. Feet are going to cancel. Now, I know it's a big mess. You have to be careful. Use plenty of space. 0.5 times 5,280 yards. Remember, that's what we ended up with. We didn't cross it out, over 3. So you do 0.5 times 5,280, and then you make a fraction out of it or divide by 3, and you get 880 yards. I know it seems like a lot of work, but I'm telling you, once you get used to it, it's foolproof. So practice and you'll do great. I want you to pause the video and try these 2 problems on your own. When you're ready, show all your work, come back and take a look at the answer and see how you did. 6,250 milligrams goes over 1. According to this, 1 gram equals 1,000 milligrams. Milligrams cancels, and I end up with 6,250 grams over 1,000, which gives me 6.250 grams. How did you do? If you went wrong, look for where you went wrong. This is just practice. It's brand new for you. We want to make sure you do it right after 2 or 3 tries. The next one is a word problem. Don't let that scare you. Jess bought 3 quarts of pineapple juice. How many pints? 3 quarts, 3 quarts is equal to how many pints? Isn't this just the same kind of problem but doing quarts to pints? What I need is this. I know that 1 quart is 2 pints according to my table here. So I'm going to take 3 quarts over 1 and I'm going to multiply by my unit fraction. I want to get rid of quarts. I want to end up with pints. 1 quart equals 2 pints. So I find quarts. 1 quart equals 2 pints. Quarts cancels because it's the same thing top to bottom, and I end up with 6 pints. How'd you do? I hope well. The next questions I want you to do on your own and have ready to show me when you get to class. Make sure you write all your steps down so that if you go wrong, we can figure out where and we can fix it. Good luck.